Good morning, good evening, depending on whatever part of the world you're currently residing in. This is your host, Vic Ballara. I am a certified master coach, executive coach, and CEO of World Class HR. Many of you know me from the work I do with IPAC in terms of PSIG facilitation, as well as my blog and white paper and recent ebook. I'd like to welcome you to Measuring the Impact of Coaching. This is an excerpt of the 4-hour master's class, a deep dive in how to help your clients measure the impact of coaching and maximize the return on investment. So we're going to move very quickly. Why this is important, we'll talk a little bit about the 7 different techniques available to measure the impact, how to calculate the ROI of coaching, and then how to use this ROI model to sell and deliver programs. Now, this is what should be really important to your clients. This is a study, a longitudinal study done over 2 years by Development Dimensions International, about 15,000 respondents, and they indicated when asked, what is the quality of your leadership? They, over the last 5 years, gave them a very resounding F, letter grade. 40% were considered high quality. Now, what I find even equally shocking is that human resources, when asked the same question, provided answers less than the leaders themselves. And this is mind-boggling because HR typically owns leadership development. So this is saying that they're not doing a very good job. Now, one of the key business outcomes we're going to focus on today is productivity. Now, there are a lot of outcomes that coaching has an impact on, but this is universal. No one would say we don't need more productivity. In fact, Peter Drucker, the management guru, once said a 10% increase in productivity would double the profits of most organizations. And honestly, what I'm finding is the energy leadership core energy coaching program typically will increase productivity 25%. So doing the math, that means that profits could quadruple given this formula. Now, what I really want to point out is not a lot of coaches are doing this. This was a huge study done by Right Management that indicated just 14% were doing any type of formal pre and post assessment, measuring the impact of coaching. So what this means is you can be one of the elite who truly can differentiate themselves from anyone else by helping your clients maximize the return on their investment. Now, the model that we're about to present is a variation on what Donald Kirkpatrick had developed back in the 50s and 60s, where he was evaluating training based upon how they reacted, what they learned, how their behavior changed, and what results they were able to achieve. So our model is completely rewriting the book on ROI as it relates to energy leadership. And not only are we going to talk about 5 ways to measure the impact, we're actually talking about 7 today. So here is our model, variation on the Kirkpatrick presentation. And again, it starts with level 1. Typically provided level 1, level 2, and maybe level 3, but you know what? CEOs and CFOs are only interested in level 4 and 5. So level 1 is really, we call those the happy sheets. You fill them out after a variety of seminars, workshops. You filled it out, you know, in terms of a hotel stay. Everybody wants to know, did you like it? And that's important. So the questions here are like, did you find the time worthwhile? Was the information relative to your job? What's the likelihood of you using these skills? But it doesn't mean whether they learned anything or not. Level 2 is about learning, and you do a pre and post skills test. So you might ask questions about Gales, gremlins, what does default tendency mean? And that way before and after, you can measure, did they learn it? More important than did they like it. But what's even more important is, are they using the skills that you taught? And typically this would be surveying the employees, the direct reports of the person who got the coaching in the first place. Now, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is really level 4 and level 5. And level 4 is looking at the impact on business outcomes like productivity. And then level 5 takes that impact and measures the return on investment. That's what's going to get the attention of the CEO or CFO. Chief HR officers are always being questioned by their boss, the president, or CEO or CFO. You know, what is this going to do for us? What's the impact? What's the bottom line result? Now, you'll see in a minute, our model is pretty rigorous, and it's kind of like climbing to the top of a mountain. It's not complicated. It's a little challenging. It might be rigorous. It might require a bit of effort and time. But trust me, when you get to the top of the mountain, like this view, the results that you achieve through ROI are truly spectacular and worth the effort. Now, the sixth type of measuring impact of coaching is called return on expectations. And we have a built-in tool without even using the ELI, and it's the wheel of life. So you've seen this. You can define these any way you want, and then work with your clients and say, okay, productivity-wise, where would you put yourself today? They might say a 4. Where would you like to be in 6 months? And they might say, okay, I'd like to be a 7. And then you can probe a little bit deeper. So tell me what a 7 might look like to you. And then even further, what are the obstacles getting in your way at the moment in achieving that 7 today? And then go through the coaching program, SMART goals, etc. So even without using the ELI, we can demonstrate a return on expectations. Now, if you use the ELI, what's really cool about this tool, among many things, is that we have a built-in survey. These are the 14 questions after the 7 level questions that they answer. And I coach individuals for a minimum of 6 months to 12 months. 6 months we do 2 ELIs, 12 months we do 4. And here's an example of a return on expectations where they said they would, you know, they would like to be at a 3, and in reality they actually got to a 5, so the return on expectations was 67%. So here's another one where health and wellness went up 100%. So what is the meaning of ROI? Now you probably recognize this Tom Cruise face. I'm not going to do the scream that he says, show me the money from Jerry Maguire, but show me the ROI. So what does it mean? Well, return on investment literally is looking at the gain from the investment less the cost of the investment divided by the cost of the investment. Now, it would be really great if we just had a button on our keyboard you could press that would generate ROI. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you what that button looks like. It actually exists. So again, our definition on return on investment. When working with individuals, I always ask them, so tell me, what would you say a very good return on your investment might be? So beating the S&P 500, they might say, if we could beat it by 14%, we're going to be ecstatic. There's actually a 20-year venture capital index that if you could exceed that index by 25%, you're doing really well. If you ask any operations or financial executive what the return on equipment, capital investment in equipment, what a great return would be, they would be say 76%. Well, you know, people are human capital investments as well. So they might say, well, you know, a 76% return on our investment in people would be great. Well, you know what, drum roll, Energy Leadership Coaching has produced in excess of 955%. In fact, I have another study that actually increased over 1,000%. So what's our methodology? So this is the rigor that we're talking about. It's not complicated, but it does take effort, and it does take some data. It takes customization to each of your clients. This is not automatic, and what's really critical is that little blue box isolating the effects of coaching. And that is so important because you don't want to say, the return on investment was, 10 to 1, and somebody says, they raise their hand, yeah, but did you consider this, that, and the other thing? So we want to consider this, that, and the other thing before we mention any comment about ROI. The 4-hour deep dive I mentioned is a master's class where we will work with you to develop the tools and the methodology and the processes to implement this system no matter what your client environment looks like. And the deep dive is in the front end, developing your evaluation plan, collecting baseline data, isolating the effects of coaching, and then converting that data to monetary value. Now, I talk about ROI and I only look at productivity, but there's tons of intangible benefits, and we know what those are. They're the anecdotal remarks that you hear. Well, this person is so a lot more positive. They bring solutions, not problems. They used to be really a whiner. I mean, those are, some anecdotal positive comments that, they're such a different person, so energetic and positive. What are those worth? Well, you could spend time doing that, but I think the objective measures around ROI are really much more powerful. Now, Gallup has been collecting engagement data for over 10 years. And when you look at the percent of employees who are not engaged, it's flat at like 50%, give or take a percent. And according to Gallup, this costs companies upwards of $400 billion every year in lost productivity and turnover, poor customer service. And you really wonder, now, why is that? Because they're spending $700 to $800 million a year on employee engagement services like surveys and recognition programs, and yet no matter, that billion-dollar spend is not producing anything but continuing to contribute to a $400 billion loss. Well, the real key here, and I gave it away in the title, is that managers are not engaged. And we've known that for 20 years because of the data around E-factor scores. Well, what's funny is just recently, like this year, Gallup is saying that managers, in quotes, at all levels, account for 70% of the variance in engagement. What a silly statement to make. We've known that. You can't, no matter what you do with employees to increase engagement, if the manager isn't engaged, nothing happens. The employee is all excited about this, and the manager is catabolic and is just beating the engagement out of them. So we've known that for years. Gallup is just kind of reinforcing what we've known. So here's the study that one of 6 that I've published, where we demonstrated a 5.6 to 1 return on investment, or a 560% increase, or worded a different way, for every dollar they invested in coaching, they got $5.60 back. And this is a result of zeroing in on some of these intangibles, but more importantly, looking at this 43% increase in productivity over a 6-month period of coaching. Now, why is that important? Well, there aren't a lot of top performers in companies. In fact, if you ask clients, and I ask them all the time, what percent of your employees are top performers? And it's, maybe 20%. Well, here's a study by Aon Hewitt that said the top 5% of all high performers yield 26% of the organization's results. So we need to focus our efforts on the ones who can impact productivity, not focus on the majority of workers and do something that's a one-size-fits-all. So let's start with the leadership team, roll it out from the C-suite down to high potentials, and we will truly change that organization. Now, there's an old saying that says the first person who talks price loses. So don't get into what does this cost too soon, because this is what your clients are going to react to. And in fact, it's not a cost, it's an investment. Now, this is something that I show them. This is the results they can expect from higher E-factor scores. Productivity can double by just shifting from a 3.2 to a 3.5 or higher. Work-life balance, despite the fact that you can never truly achieve work-life balance because of work hours, commuting time, sleep time, and family time. But individuals are telling us that as their energy level shifts, they have higher and higher feelings of improved work-life balance. So that's truly important. So I like to ask clients, so what would it look like if your organization had 25% greater productivity? Well, typically they'll say, well, we can hire more people. Our sales would increase, profit would grow, business would expand, our stock would go up, our market share would go up, our shareholders would be happy. I might even take them to another exercise that would say, well, if 25%, if all of your leaders demonstrated 25% greater productivity, what would that be worth to the organization? And I guarantee you it's in the multiple millions of dollars. Now I throw this in because no matter how much you do around ROI, they still might say, you know, Vic, we just can't afford it right now. Which is kind of dumb because of course they can afford it. They can afford to pay poor performers. They just don't want to spend on coaching. So always have something to offer, quoting Michael Pork, the author of Book Yourself Solid. So here's our plan. We do one-on-one coaching. Typically the investment is this. And they say, well, can you do anything else cheaper? Well, yeah, we could do group coaching. Now, if you look at the bottom line here, you see that the hourly rate just doubled for you, and yet the cost for the client is down by a third. So it's not one-on-one coaching, but it gives you a great information. It teaches them how to shift their energy, and it may not be the 6-to-1 ROI, but it still will still be considerable. And then if they say, well, anything else, Vic, we want to do something, but we just can't do that right now. Well, we could do a workshop. We could do a half-day workshop. And if we look at this, we now have lowered the cost per person down to $1,000, but, and again, that drum roll, look at what it does to your hourly rate. Now, this assumption is critical because it assumes you're not spending a lot of time designing the content for the workshop. And I did that, unfortunately. Now, why did I do that? Because, IPEC has a PowerPoint presentation, and it really looks like this. It's terrible. No one would present data this way. This is a presentation based on their research from 2006. So I had, I sold my first workshop and then said, oh my God, now I got to put this stuff together. Now, the Association for Training and Development standards for developing a one-day workshop says that it takes about 8 hours of design time to create the content, the exercises, and the graphics in order to deliver 1 hour of a workshop. Well, if I was delivering a full day workshop, So that's 8 hours times 8 is about 64 hours. Now that's a lot of time. I didn't have it, but I had to create it. So I spent 40 hours, an entire week, working on my workshop design. Now I've gone back and I've created a lot more exercises, a lot more interactive communications, a lot of better graphics, and I, have now made that available to all my personal clients. So you don't have to spend 60 hours creating a workshop. Now remember that button that I told you that you wish it was on your computer and it kind of looked like this? That little button that says press here to calculate ROI? Well, part of the materials that I've developed is just that. It's an interactive Excel spreadsheet that just fill in the blanks, and I'll tell you not only what your investment will be, but more importantly, what your return on investment will be. So again, never mention cost and never be the first to talk about it, because if I were to tell the client this is going to cost you something north of $300,000, they'd be showing me the door. But what I want to do is say, your current system, what you're currently doing now, you're losing about $600,000 a week. And that's important because that's the cost of status quo, of doing nothing. And status quo is the enemy of progress. So I want them to know that and have that figure in the top of their mind. Because when I say that now the investment, the return on investment is going to be north of $2.5 million, the $300,000 investment doesn't sound at all bad. And I even like to joke with them. I said, you know what, even if I'm off by a factor of 3, getting a return of 2.5 to 1 on your money is extraordinary. So, want more clients, want more revenue, want to make more profit? What I've put together is a turnkey program that includes slides, and I'm not talking about death by PowerPoint, but 243 slides that you can customize to meet your client's needs. 3 agendas for workshops, a half-day, full day, and a 90-minute webinar. Professional graphics, step-by-step instructions, pacing, slide-by-slide pacing, and detailed presenter notes. The template for the ROI calculator that I mentioned automatically calculates cost, it calculates the ROI, and then I've added 3 master classes, pricing, ROI techniques, and that deep dive I mentioned. And all of the materials that I've developed, white papers, case studies, and the ebook are all brandable. That is, you can put your logo on it and say that this is what we have achieved. These are our cases, and make them your own. And then just to top it off, I've added 3 30-minute one-on-one coaching calls, and they never expire. You can focus them on whatever is necessary. If you need help on a proposal, workshop design, or closing a deal, whatever you need. So, since we're talking about ROI, the ROI on this is huge. It's 20 to 1. So imagine doing your own first workshop, and even if you only put 25 hours into it, and your time is worth, what, $100 an hour at least, that would be $2,500 you're investing in it. And it isn't at all going to cost you that kind of an investment. Right now, it's available to you at this URL at 75% off, a limited time offer. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to encourage you to think ROI, talk to your clients about, what a good ROI would be, and would it be helpful if I could show you how you could document the objective measure of the impact of coaching on your organization. So thank you again for your time, and let's change the organizational success one leader at a time. Good luck, and See you on the other side.